Just want to remind you guys, this episode is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Of course, your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. Well, Derek, it has been a crazy offseason for the Indianapolis Colts. A lot has happened since the Indianapolis Colts played their final game here earlier this year against the Jacksonville Jaguars. A ton has gone down for the Indianapolis Colts. A ton of things the Colts have needed to do and a ton of things they have done here in the 2025 offseason. So I want to kind of talk about it a little bit and talk about this idea of how the Colts have filled their biggest positions of need here in the 2025 offseason, right? Because there was a lot of positions that we were going to say. So I thought kind of how we could do this, Derek, is we could list a couple of things that we had said the Colts need to address. They need to get better in these areas if they want to improve and have a better record in 2025. So I think the first thing before we get into like specific positions was that defensive coordinator position, Derek, because we talked about it a lot. Gus Bradley, especially this last year and really the last 2 years, he hasn't been good. The Colts defense has not been good. I mean, it was very predictable, very bland, very easy to prepare for. And it was very obvious, Derek, especially, down the stretch, the Giants game and even the Jaguars game. I mean, you're playing against backup quarterbacks and you're letting them do that to you. So it was very evident that the Indianapolis Colts needed a change at that side of the ball. And the Colts obviously fired Gus Bradley. And then they brought in Lou Anarumo, the former Bengals defensive coordinator, who's definitely going to change some things up. And they really changed a lot about their defensive staff. I think the only guy they kept on was Charlie Partridge, the defensive line coach. So, I mean, what were your impressions just there on kind of how the Colts really committed to this kind of change with Lou Anarumo? And we talked about it a lot, Derek, a very DB-specific focus from the coaching staff.
Yeah, it was definitely a long time coming. When we talked about, we even talked about this last offseason about whether or not Gus Bradley should have been there or not. Your defense went from being the 22nd ranked overall unit in 2023 to being the 28th overall ranked unit in 2024. So clearly it wasn't getting better, even with the guys that were, a year older and a year more experienced than the previous year. You still didn't get better. You got a lot worse. And, you had way too many guys, especially on the defensive side of things, Cody, that were telling reporters that this team doesn't prepare the way it needs to. And I mean, again, it's not like these different sides of the ball are never around each other. Obviously they are, but in the weight rooms, in the film rooms, and individual stuff, defense and offense don't mix with each other. They only know each other. They only know their defensive brothers on that side. So when you got guys that are calling people out, particularly on that particular side of the ball, you know that not only players aren't doing their job right, defensive coordinators and coaches aren't doing their jobs right either. So it was definitely something that was needed. And it was definitely something that I was totally on board with. And I mean, I'll tell you what, when we took Lou Anarumo, I was definitely curious about how I would feel about Lou Anarumo's defense changing the way that it is. But I definitely am very excited about, the potential for what Lou Anarumo can bring.
Absolutely. So we were like, that's the first piece of the puzzle. Now you actually need to get some legitimate players in that defense to help it out. And, we all had our question marks because, again, it's Chris Ballard. He hasn't done a lot in free agency in the last couple of years to really help improve this roster. But the Indianapolis Colts did actually go out in free agency and sign not one, but two specific guys in that secondary that are going to be instant impact starters. You're talking, of course, Cameron Bynum first, the safety from the Minnesota Vikings, and then signing Charvarius Ward, the cornerback, formerly with the San Francisco 49ers. So, Derek, two guys that, I think have Pro Bowl / All-Pro potential. We've seen it with Charvarius Ward in 2023. When he was fully right, he was one of, if not the best corners in football. And Cameron Bynum's an ascending player coming off a career year. So, both guys who have proven that they can play at a high level, and certainly players that you look at and you say, man, those were some big question marks, right? Like the number one outside corner, huge question mark for the Colts the last couple of years. Free safety, the same. Big question mark, specifically with the health of Julian Blackmon or lack thereof. And the Colts went out and they signed two guys here that a lot of people would say those are some of the top players on the market. And it was a very anti-Ballard free agency from what we're used to. What were your impressions on how the Colts didn't just say we're going to focus on the DBs, but they put their money where their mouth was, at least this year?
Yeah, and the players were saying it too. I mean, the players were saying that this team needs more talent. This team needs to do more to, make it better for this team, because right now it's just not working, the talent that they have. So they had to go bigger, and if they didn't go big, they were all going to go home. You could not run this same unit out there again, especially after Ballard said that this unit, it just needed a little bit of time to get cohesive with each other. And then when it comes to that, then they'll gel and things will look better. And it didn't. It got way worse. And it was abysmal last year. It didn't matter what offense you put out there. It didn't matter what quarterback would have been out there for the Indianapolis Colts. That defense would have found a way to screw us over when it came to that. So not a great season. And obviously to get two premier players in the secondary is huge, not only for the defensive coordinator change, but again, just for the entirety of the defense, because now it just allows your defensive linemen to have more chances to get after the quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. And, the Colts even went back in the draft and drafted another corner in Justin Wally in round 3. So there's been a major emphasis here, Derek. I don't know about you, but I think this is about the deepest corner room for the Indianapolis Colts I've remembered in recent memory. Like, it's that deep. There's that many guys that could seriously contribute on this roster, right? You have guys like Juju Brents. You have Jalen Jones still on your roster, who I thought had a nice, year 2 there. You brought in, Corey Ballantyne as well. You still have Kenny Moore in there. So there's a lot of guys in here in this cornerback room that I think really could factor in here, Derek. And, the emphasis truly was on improving this secondary, and the Colts didn't just do it once. They attacked it in like multiple different ways via free agency and also the draft. So you clearly saw them understanding that the product that was out there a year ago just simply wasn't good enough at all from a talent standpoint and just overall production standpoint. Like, if you want to truly compete, you can't be having these guys out here that you had a year ago. It's just not going to work. It's not going to be good for you.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
So, yeah, I mean, Derek, that was a huge emphasis for this team. It was very clear, very obvious that they felt like these couldn't be the players that they ran out again here after what happened last year, and how really any quarterback, whether it was a starter or a backup, could really tear you to pieces. And they did tear you to pieces. It was really, really poor. So Colts obviously made a huge emphasis there, signed a lot of DBs, which I'm personally a fan of, because I think you can never truly have enough DBs on your roster. I mean, I think almost every offseason you need to at least bring in a couple, even if you really feel good about it. So, yeah, you definitely saw that clear emphasis. And, the Colts also did some other things as well in terms of free agency. They brought in, Khalil Herbert, the running back, to compete there for that RB2. They brought in DJ Giddens as well at running back. So you have two guys in there you feel a lot more confident than the group you had a year ago. Obviously, you brought in Daniel Jones to compete with Anthony Richardson. So you have two quarterbacks who have starting experience. Now, how good starting experience, that's another story. But you brought in two quarterbacks that have played some games in the NFL. And, obviously we know the Indianapolis Colts also lost some players as well when it comes to their team. They lost Dio Adangbo to free agency, and they also lost Will Fries and Ryan Kelly. So they lost three guys that played significant snaps for them, but we saw them in the draft, Derek, at least partially address some of those positions that they lost. We saw them in round two. We saw them draft JTT in round two out of Ohio State. I'll get it eventually. So they addressed that. While, he may not be a guy that plays as many snaps as Dio played a year ago, you have another guy in there that can factor in, right? And then we saw the Indianapolis Colts go and take a guy like Jalen Travis there to provide some depth there on the offensive line in round four. We saw them just do different things like that, sign Neville Gallimore as well. So we really saw the Colts make an emphasis to try to kind of recoup some of that a little bit. Now, there still are some positions we definitely feel like they need to address, but, we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. But
as we said, guys, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Now, what is Prize Picks? Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Instead of battling against thousands of other players across platforms, you're basically picking 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you're choosing more or less on those stat projections to be able to watch those winnings roll in. It's very easy. Do you guys want to play along at some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and UFC fighter Sugar Sean O'Malley? Well, if you guys sign up today, you can find the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view the entries of some of the biggest names on the platform and be a part of that as well. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that with NBA, NHL, and college basketball entries today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Like a lot of other things, guys, they also offer injury insurance, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So if someone exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you and the rest of your entry stays live. So it's great bounce back for that one. What I love about the app as well, guys, is it's not just sports like NBA, NHL, football, and tennis, and baseball, and all these other things, but there's also a lot of others that go into it as well. If you like to place entries on video game situations like Call of Duty, CS2, Apex, if that's something that appeals to you, there's a wide variety of sports and video games and everything else that you can place entries on. And I love how expansive it is. Even just looking at the NBA, there's entries you can make with turnovers, with points. You can do combo deals, dunks, field goals attempted, all of these different things. So there's just so many different ways to make money off of these entries. Be sure to download the app today and use the code JUICE to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup.
Of course, we got to talk about as well the Indianapolis Colts fixing probably their biggest glaring need on offense last year. That was the tight end position. With drafting Tyler Warren there at pick 14, I mean, Derek, that was like the dream pick all offseason. Like, we're like, if he gets there, you absolutely run the card up if you're the Indianapolis Colts. And somehow, some way, he did get there for the Colts, and they were able to, draft him and bring him in and honestly have the best tight end prospect you've had probably since Dallas Clark, honestly. So what are your thoughts there on just the ways that the Colts kind of maybe tried to recoup some of the stuff they lost, and also just bringing in a guy that could potentially, really, really help your tight end room?
Yeah, they did a great job this year of not only, you brought in Tyler Warren, and obviously the remainder of the tight end room is still left to be desired, but you brought in great depth in a lot of different places this season. Like you said, bringing in a Khalil Herbert, bringing in a DJ Giddens, so now you have a running back room that has a ton of options this year that, the Colts didn't have last year after Jonathan Taylor. I feel much more confident in what we have now. And Offensive line, obviously, still need to work on that a little bit more, but you did bring in Jalen Travis. Feel a little bit better about the swing tackle position than before. Tight end wise, obviously, you needed to do a lot of things in that regard. You only brought Mo Alley Cox back, and I mean, Cody, good Lord, the amount of people on X that were like, wow, this was the Colts' grand move at tight end. It's like, guys, they were re-signing him to a vet minimum. Like, chill out. Like, oh my gosh. Like, you really think this is the grand move at tight end? Like, shut up. But yeah, they had to go with somebody else that was a lot more explosive. So now you have your true number one. You got a couple guys in there now that can be serviceable based on what you want to do in certain packages now with the tight ends, because now you have a guy in Tyler Warren that can do everything. So now he's the ultimate complete H-back tight end type of player that can line up, do anything that you want him to do. You have Mo Alley Cox if you want to bring him in and goal line packages, short yards gainage, blocking, all that type of stuff. And then, of course, you have guys like Drew Ogletree and Will Mallory that, can be receiving threats and also block a little bit. So overall, I kind of like the depth that the Colts have done this offseason a little bit more than how they've done it with other years.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, if you look at that and you think Tyler Warren's an instant impact guy, Derek, you've brought in at minimum 3 new impact starters right away. And that's huge. And that's not even factoring in, guys like JT. That's not even factoring in, other players that you could throw in there as well, who I don't think are going to start, but certainly will have an impact here early. So yeah, you definitely brought in a lot of impact guys, and you absolutely needed to bring in 3 guys at least that were going to start at those positions because you just didn't have it. But it's like you've started to bring in some guys that could potentially be some true alphas, right, in those rooms. Like you've raised the ceiling of those rooms so much, right, from where they were a year ago. I mean, you're like for the tight end position. I like the tight ends the Colts had, but they were all in my mind number 2s or worse. Like they didn't have a number 1. And you needed a number 1. I liked a guy like Jalen Jones, but to me, he was always a cornerback too. Like those sorts of things. And I never viewed Julian Blackmon, especially with all the injuries, as that free safety of the future. So you absolutely needed to bring in on those 3 levels. Absolutely. You needed to bring in some guys that were going to be the long-term pieces for those, given positions there. So yeah, absolutely do believe that was a huge win for the Indianapolis Colts. And some of their biggest glaring needs. I mean, I think if you were to ask us, and he probably did all the way back at the beginning, what are the biggest needs for the Colts? We probably would have said secondary, and we probably would have said tight end. Those were the biggest ones for us, for them. And the Colts did that, to their credit. They brought in 3 guys that are going to probably start right away. I know at least 2. I mean, I would say Tyler Warren absolutely is going to as well. I think it's pretty like 99.9% confident that you're going to have at least 3 guys in there. So, yeah, it's really exciting, man, that the Colts actually did something this offseason and didn't just sit on their hands, but they actually went out and were, proactive a little bit and went out and got guys in free agency as well as the draft. And we'll just have to see how it plays out. But certainly on paper, the Colts did a lot to help their needs. And, obviously the biggest one, it's going to hinge on the quarterback, right? And so how do you help your quarterback? Obviously you protect your quarterback, but also you give your quarterback a good defense and you also give your quarterback more weapons. And the Colts did that this offseason. So, we don't know if it's going to work out with Anthony Richardson. We don't know what's going to happen there. But if you're the Colts, you're saying, hey, we've pretty much done everything we possibly can at this point to help him out. And if he fails, I mean, I know it's going to be your job, but you've at least at this point, I think, done, at least this offseason, pretty much everything that you could do if you're the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, about close to it. I mean, outside of maybe 1 or 2 position groups, there's not a whole lot more that really could be done. And, there's still options for the Indianapolis Colts to do some things this offseason as well. I look for them to potentially still look on the offensive line for depth purposes, even potentially still looking for safety as well. So definitely some more to get done potentially. But like you said, it was a much better offseason than in years past because, again, the Indianapolis Colts not only went out and got players, but they got really good players that will do a lot of great things for this team for the immediate future. And it's going to help to put this team in a lot of different ways than what they were in 2024.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, let us know what your thoughts were here on how the Indianapolis Colts attacked this offseason and how they filled their biggest positions of need here. So let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Did you feel like the Colts did a really good job here at really addressing some of those big issues from a year ago? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. If you haven't already, be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, all that good stuff. But guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, guys, go Colts.